Good afternoon, Gavin. How are you?
Hello, Jane. I'm very well. How are you keeping?
Yeah, very good, thank you. So for anybody that's listening to Signet's podcast, today I'm thrilled to be joined by Gavin, who I've met throughout the process of Gavin looking for work through this time, but also Gavin's been quite a regular commentator and attender and actually saved my bacon on a recent training session which I was leading, which my Wi-Fi completely collapsed on me and left me in a position where Gavin had to man the fort. So I'm really excited to have him on with us today, and together we're going to be looking at sort of the impact of COVID-19 on people looking for work and people as talented as Gavin, and looking at how Gavin's coped, particularly through lockdown, what he's learned from the experience, and also give you a bit of an invite for Gavin, because ideally we'd like to have him back in work as soon as, because I've got a new potential client in him, hopefully. So I'm going to hand you over to Gavin. Gavin, can you just give the people that are listening a brief overview of your background and sort of how we've come to have this conversation?
Yeah, sure. Jane, I've spent almost all of my working life in food and drink. So, and a big part of that time I've spent at Bidfood UK. And for those who haven't seen the Bidfood trucks on the road, Bidfood is one of the UK's largest food service wholesalers. They supply schools, pubs, restaurants, any place really where food is prepared and served. So I was very fortunate enough to work for Bidfood, as I say, for nearly 15 years, heading up the marketing.
Wow.
There. It was a great experience, and particularly because the business had placed quite significant investment in their infrastructure around about the time that I joined. So new warehouses with freezers, new trucks, recruited, a big sales team and so on. So there really was pressure on the whole business to deliver a very strong customer acquisition strategy and a strong growth strategy. So I came in exciting times. We were absolutely on the front foot, and a big part of my responsibilities, as I say, we're thinking about actually how we could engage in a greater way with our existing customers and get more sales out of them. But equally, how do we very effectively take on new customers in what is a very competitive industry? Many people will know that the wholesale industry in food service is quite dominated by regional players. So about 60% of the supply to the market actually comes from smaller businesses based in the regions rather than large entities like Bidfood and our main competitor, Breaks.
Okay.
Exciting time. So it was important to hang on to customers. We didn't want to lose any. We wanted to get more on board, but equally we wanted to get more of the customer's basket. So we knew from insight that actually most of our customers were only buying about 40% of their requirements from us. So a big part of the challenge was to actually get customers engaged with more categories and so on. So that really was the background. So a very, if you like, energized environment, great environment to work in. And the way I went about sort of achieving success is that I'm a firm believer in insight-based strategy. And I have a very deep understanding of the food and drink industry in the UK, both from a food service and a retail perspective as a result of the 15 years that I was there. So understanding what we all like to eat, what we should be eating when we should be eating healthily, what we like to eat when we how you might eat differently as a school child having a school meal, or how you might eat differently going out to the pub on Friday night.
Yeah.
And that we service. So I have a deep understanding of the product requirement for the market. Part of my responsibilities there were also to look after our own label, which covered ambient, frozen and chilled own label products, which were under Bidfood brand. So I worked very closely with manufacturers. For example, you'll remember years back when Jamie Oliver highlighted in particular how poor school meals were in the UK.
Yes.
Public Health England got involved, and there was thankfully, because I have kids at school, a better thought process around how we feed our kids. And that translated into a lot of work which I needed to do at Bidfood to make sure that our products for schools were fit for purpose. So engineering, fat and salt content and so on. So great experience working with the manufacturing base to make sure that we optimized our product offering. I think like any business, and this applies, no matter what you're doing or where you are, in anything that you sell. As consumers nowadays, we're bombarded by messages from so many different places, whether it's social media, advertising, people calling us or whatever. And in a B2B context, that could even include, salespeople wanting to see you and have appointments. So I'm very conscious when I pull together a marketing strategy, actually to ensure that we think about, the buzzword is that multi-channel approach, and how we talk to the customer in a number of different ways and using a number of different channels. But importantly, making sure that we use a language that the customer relates to and understands. And you would talk to a school caterer quite differently to how you would talk to a publican, for example.
Yeah.
So really interesting. And as part of this, obviously, we've seen over the last, 5 to 8 years, a massive evolution around how we communicate digitally and how we transact digitally. A really significant area of interest for me is actually how we digitize our marketing and relationship with our customers. And having left BidFood in the middle of last year, I've spent a lot of time since then actually working with a software company which is quite prominent in the food service industry. Actually just using my expertise from my food service background to help them generate and create new and innovative software which talks to and engages with customers more effectively. So that's been a fantastic project to be involved with, and has given me a real deep dive into the world of digital.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, that's me, and hopefully in not too much of a big nutshell.
No, I like that. It makes it nice and simplified for us. Okay, so obviously at the moment, Gavin, you're looking for a new opportunity, and I know from speaking to you off camera that COVID has impacted that in ways that we probably weren't expecting back in January, February. So just give me a brief overview of, I suppose, how COVID has impacted, but then looking at, because I just know you as the most positive person. So I suppose how you've coped in lockdown and obviously not working at this moment in time.
Yes, I mean, I think like so many people, even, people engaged, and employed, we all found ourselves with a lot more time on our hands. We probably also found ourselves outside of environments that we had come to be familiar with, environments where we were surrounded by people that we could, talk with both formally in meetings, but also informally around the water cooler and over a cup of coffee or a drink after work. Obviously, that suddenly all dried up, and we all sort of pretty much, stuck in our own homes, particularly in the initial part of lockdown. And I think for me, one of my first concerns was actually to make sure that I didn't disconnect in any way from the industry that I work in and the areas of interest that I have in various businesses. And that was my first chain of thoughts. And I think the other bits, and I think which all of us who are parents related to, was also just getting a good organizational structure at home, because the kids very quickly were at home. And what I did is just made sure that we all stuck to some sort of daily structure. We were pretty much all behind our desks by the usual time in the morning. The kids had work to do from school and so on. But what I did is I made sure that I continued to keep abreast of everything going on in the industry. The way that I did that was probably on a number of fronts. One of the key areas, obviously, is just, looking at newsfeed, BBC News, so on, just understanding what the emerging story was out there. But what I did is I also made sure that I started connecting and joining groups, more groups in the industry, more groups than I've ever joined. And the ones which I had particular interest in were ones which actually held regular, very often weekly forums where there was a Zoom call or a Teams meeting where we could all contribute and actually talk to one another. So, whilst a lot of webinars are really useful, but some of them are just talking at you, those are still good and certainly engaged with those. But I really like the ones where I could actually play a part and talk to people and understand their experiences, what was going on in their customer base and their route to market and so on. So that's been really key for me. And I would say that probably every day I take part or observe or are a part of at least one or two calls of that nature. they're not all sort of business hard skill related. I've also taken the opportunity to use this time to perhaps look in some of the dusty corners of my own personal development, which I've not invested in for some time.
Yeah, yeah.
And, you know, being a leader is not a process which you've ever completely learnt. Being a good marketer is not something which you can say at a point in time you've mastered. Things change, technology changes, points of emphasis around how we look after our people change.
Yeah.
We know, for example, there's a lot more emphasis on mental health, employee well-being.
Hugely so, yeah.
Ways of thinking about how we engage our employees and actually get them to enjoy what they do and enjoying what they do more for us as a business. So I've spent a lot of time accessing the enormous amount of free to access resource. It's absolutely mind-blowing what's available out there, and good quality stuff on all of these various subject matters. And I've found it so interesting. And I think, just by way of example, one of the real standout resources which I came across is a whole array of sort of YouTube videos from a very capable woman called Jude Jennison, who runs a leadership with horses as a business concept. And outside of COVID, she actually has people come into a field and do leadership training.
Oh my God, that sounds amazing.
For horses, yeah. But she's also written books, and she also has a very useful blog called Leadership Through Uncertainty. And it was just so appropriate given the time. And actually, interesting strategies and also interesting conversations where she interviewed people, leaders in various industries, and worked out how they were coping with COVID. And it was fascinating to actually see not only how differently people have approached the challenges, but also just to understand that this was such a common thread for everyone. And actually everyone didn't really have a lot of the answers, but that didn't give us an excuse just to bury our heads in our hand and just hope for the best. We still had to carry on and keep our goals and keep our mindset strong and forward moving. So yeah, so I've interacted a great deal online. There's fantastic stuff there, and also fantastic people. I've been quite overwhelmed by the number of people who I've been able to email and just say, look, do you mind if I just have a chat to you, because I'm just interested in this and interested in that. And people who are so willing to give up a lot of their time, you know, for what really is no gain for themselves. It's quite incredible, and I've made sure that I've tried to do that myself as well.
Yeah.
I think the other important thing, just to sort of you know, wrap on this question, is you know, healthy body, healthy mind is really key. I'm a big fan of eating for life. I'm a big fan of making sure that, you know, what you take into your body in terms of food is I
feel slightly guilty for the bourbon biscuit I just had, Gavin.
Oh, you can, and actually I was just going to advocate that actually part of that is sometimes allowing yourself some indulgence, and you should. And we all have those things that we enjoy eating, which we shouldn't. But also being active. So I'm very fortunate to have two very active kids, a very active wife as well. And there was quite a lot of things we couldn't do during lockdown because, you know, the leisure centres had closed and so on. But what we could do is get on our bikes and go for a decent ride. We have a little 4-year-old dog who's very active. He needed to go for a walk twice a day. So we got out, got into the fresh air. It was important to get out the house, I think. And you know, just get those endorphins going, which we all coming to know more about. But good food, good exercise, and just keeping a positive mind, and also surrounding yourself with some positive information, positive mindset. Sympathetically listening to those doom and gloomers or the people who had buried their heads in their hands. Perhaps try and help them come out of that, but focus and actually rely more on information and inspiration from positive sources was what I really focused on.
Brilliant. And it obviously pays dividends, because every time I talk to you, I come away feeling happier. So whatever you're doing is clearly working on that side. So I suppose, Gavin, just to conclude, because for me, these podcasts are really important because it's a chance for other people to see coping strategies in what has been, you know, a challenging 6 months, but also the end result is, as we said at the start, it's hopefully to secure you that next opportunity that we know is coming. but it's just obviously a case of when. So just for those that are listening, just give me I suppose an overview of what it is that you want to do, and what that next role looks like for you. So anybody that's listening can obviously feel free to get in touch with us, and we can make that connection.
Yes, I mean, I think, I suppose, like myself, I quite like to work in sort of quite energized environments. I am sort of reasonably comfortable with quite pacey places of work. I do quite like working in environments where perhaps decision making is not too slow, and perhaps the pace of the kind of the business pace is not too slow. So I do like reasonably quick organizations. I like sort of short decision making structures, you know, where obviously, you know, one doesn't just want to make wild decisions and uninformed decisions, but actually places where there's not too much bureaucracy and one can actually, you know, take calculated risks, you know, articulate a business plan to a leadership team or a board, and you know, quickly get buy-in and work in a place where there's some confidence and you're given a bit of accountability to get on with it to a certain extent. So I think it's great to work in a company environment where it is on the front foot. I'm not saying for one moment that is always an environment where a company is necessarily being successful. There's lots of companies with huge potential and who are and would be brilliant to work in, who need to make massive change to move forward. So, but as long as there is a willingness within the organization, and as part of that leadership team, we're all looking to achieve a improved place quite quickly in terms of business results. Those are the sort of environments that I enjoy being in.
Okay, excellent. Okay, well, so for anybody that does want to get in touch with Gavin, obviously, please do drop us a line and we can talk to you more about his background and what he's looking for and the finite details. But from us today, thank you so much, Gavin, for giving up your time. It's been an absolute pleasure, as always, to speak to you, and hopefully we'll get some positive results off this.
Thank you very much, Jane, and thank you for the opportunity to do the podcast with you. I really appreciate it.
No worries.